Hello guys, welcome back to MagicFX. Prepare yourselves for the weirdest video yet. So my first ever experience of DMT was a few years ago now, probably must have been 2016. And I was with a few friends in London, and one of them happened to have gotten some from the dark web, and it was something that I'd been interested in for years before that. I'd kind of read about it online and listened to a lot of Terence McKenna, who's a big kind of idol of mine, and it just seemed so interesting, like this alien experience where you meet beings and transport to like another world. It was like seemed like a virtual reality experience that was actually more real than real. That's how it was always explained. So I hadn't had much experience with psychedelics up to that point, apart from one time me and my friend overdosed on LSD at a barbecue, and that didn't go particularly well. Maybe I'll use that in another video. But so anyway, we're all in this flat in London, and it was all kind of a question of who's going to go first. And the way because you've got to smoke DMT, and it's you've got to vaporize it somehow, and then smoke the fumes. So we got this half-assed device together, where it was like a plastic bottle and with a bit of foil underneath. That you heat up, and the smoke goes in the bottle, and then you just inhale all that vapor. Anyway, one of my friends was first to go, and he was in the middle of doing it, and he lit it, inhaled it, and then we were all just kind of looking at each other. I think it was just the nerves and everything, and we all just burst out laughing, because the thing was, with DMT you have to hold it in your lungs for as long as you can, and we're all sitting there trying to be quiet, looking at each other, and he's sitting there trying to hold it in his lungs, and then I think it was me that let out just a bit like that, and that made him laugh, and so all the air came out of his lungs, and it kind of ruined his trip. So I felt really guilty, and I was next to go, and he didn't really get much of an experience out of his go, and there was only really enough for one trip each. But anyway, but yeah, so I kind of had that feeling of guilt, and like he was annoyed at me when going into my first ever DMT trip, and that's not some good subconscious feelings to have. Anyway, so I carried on with my go at it, and I did the same as him, lit it, got a load of vapor in the bottle, took the lid off, and just inhaled the lot in one. And apparently I seem to have quite strong lungs, because I could inhale the lot without coughing and just hold it there. And almost as soon as it was in me, it was like there was a vacuum. I was in a vacuum, like the sound dulled around me, and my vision kind of just zoomed in, and I could see patterns all on the floor, and everyone's faces was like morphing around me, and it was like as soon as it started, I wanted it to end, because I felt so scared suddenly, and I felt a bit sick. I was like, oh god, I'm gonna be sick, and the world's going crazy. And then I kind of just lost all sense of my body. I guess I closed my eyes. I didn't know if they were open or closed at this point, and just kind of went on a visual roller coaster. And I don't really remember a heck of a lot of that trip, apart from the sounds of there's like voices in my head speaking a language I couldn't understand. It was like just nonsense, like you could just hear that over and over again. And I remember like being in a room with like a black and white floor, and there was this demon kind of monster like beckoning me towards it. And so I came out of that thinking, what the heck? that was horrible, scary, disturbing, and I don't really want to ever try that again. And I didn't for a good few months. And then I happened to read more into it and more about how important set and setting is when it comes to psychedelics, and how what's happening inside you is basically reflective of what happens in your trip, and it brings up all your insecurities, anything you're feeling bad about, and just everything. If you're feeling negative, it's going to bring that to the surface and punch you in the face with it. So I thought, right, I'm going to delve into this more and probably try and do it alone this time. So I somehow got my own little stash from the dark web. So from that point on, I experienced many DMT trips on my own, just in my bedroom in the flat that I was living in at the time. And I learned a lot about myself, about mindset, about ego. And I'll kind of just explain now and describe a typical DMT trip, because they're all kind of the same, but each one had a different flavour, almost like dreams. But they would all kind of start the same way. So on the first inhale, the room will start to, it will change to a particular colour. It might go sort of a dullish red or a green. It will just be a hint of that colour, and you'll get a slight ringing in your ears, and the sound will deaden a little bit as well. Now I always had a very blank wall in front of me, and that would I'd start to see like little dots on, like little light dots on the wall. And then you take the second inhale, and that's when the dots on the wall would transform into patterns and things, and things would start getting more intense, and the ringing in your ears would get louder. And then if you looked at your hands, they'd be kind of changing colour as well and morphing. They kind of look like Play-Doh hands, like you were a cartoon or something like that, and that could be kind of creepy. And then you take the third inhale, and depending how much you'd done at this point, this either blasted you off or it didn't. If you took the third one and it didn't yet, what you would see was the patterns that were forming in front of you became 3D or almost 4D. It was hard to describe. You'd see almost 3D Pixar-like patterns and shapes just whirling around you, just incredible things. And it was like figures or beings. Like one time it felt like there were like Aztec kind of people crawling out of the wall towards me. I know that sounds terrifying, but it's not. It's almost like you're looking back through a tunnel at ancestors talking to you that exist in this magical realm that you're untapping through this substance. Anyway, usually at this point you're either gone, or you take one more hit, lay back, and then you're gone. Now, there were various states that I would be in at this time, so I'm either blissfully happy and just letting things happen, or there's fear that sets in. Now, this is where I can relate this to ego and trading. And the fear is like, it comes from wanting control, wanting to control your emotions, the physical way you feel, your environment, where you are, who you are, what you're doing, the reality that you believe in. And DMT gives you a very visual representation, an immediate reflection of those feelings. So the more you try to resist, and control your situation, the scarier and uglier and more intense your experience will be. And this, I can remember a situation where it was like I was almost on a stage, and there was like an audience of these elf-like beings in front of me. And while I was in the heat of fear and being scared and wanting to control the situation, they looked like monsters. They looked like they wanted to attack me, and I felt like on the edge of death. But when I realised I could let go of the situation and relax into it, not try and control it, not try and force myself to be happy, but to relax and let it be what it is, and let the feeling just wash over me and accept it for what it was, that's when they turned into nice beings, and it was almost like they were cheering for me. And every trip had this same lesson, it seemed. If I really think about it, the lesson is to let go, and not try to control your situation. And you can relate that to so many areas in life. Like, for example, if you're dating and you're a guy and you want to talk to a girl, what's the worst thing you can do is overthink the situation. You're either going to come across too nice, or you're going to go over there and try and be too cool, or you're going to be an arsehole, because that's what you think you're supposed to do. But if you actually live and be a human being and be in that moment and just be exactly who you are without trying, the situation will be, it's like liquid. You just become less results oriented and more just process oriented, and you accept that the outcome is either going to be good or bad, and it doesn't matter. So where this comes into trading, because I don't get into that, it's just a weird ramble. When you're looking at the charts, if you're in a trade, or even if you're backtesting, or if you're putting together a strategy or a trading plan, the biggest hurdle to overcome is your own ego and your own psychology, and it's gonna be the ruin of you if you let it. Because when it comes to learning, I always find, or I found in the beginning, it was far too easy to lie to yourself. And even in backtesting sometimes, what you might find is that you take a loss and you pretend to yourself that it didn't happen, and you're trying to control even that. So when you're trying to control life at the lowest level like that, it kind of shows that your ego is so strong that you can't even be honest with yourself. And being honest with yourself is simultaneously one of the hardest and the easiest things you can do. It's one of the hardest because you really have to know yourself to be honest with yourself. But then if you think about it, knowing yourself is the easiest thing in the world. But in this current world with so many distractions, with social media and Netflix and screens and YouTube and forex trading, Instagram, we don't get a chance to really connect with ourselves like people not so long ago would have done. When are you ever bored these days? When do you get the chance to just sit there with yourself and allow yourself to have thoughts and feelings and ideas that are your own, rather than fed through a shitty tube of the internet and shoved down your throat, when do you allow yourself that time? And there's, people talk about meditation and yoga and all this, and that is great. That is a way of doing it. But who can honestly say that that's something they regularly do and actually are benefiting from it? If you do it properly, then great. But I know in the past I've tried to do it, and it just doesn't really sit well with me. But anyway, talking about that, so getting to know yourself is so important in trading, and for me, it's what trading really is and has been, and my progression in trading through the years has been less about strategy, like what is a chock, what is a flip, what is a supply and demand zone, what's your entry criteria. That's all, is good at the start for a beginner to put a trading plan together, but it's only after you've got that the real journey begins. Like, the mountain that you have to climb is the mountain of yourself and getting to know yourself, what your weakness is, what is holding you back in life, what are your biggest failures, and what is killing you from the inside, that you need to sort out in order to be successful. And some of these things, you might need therapy for. You might have it ingrained into your subconscious that you will never be successful, you will never be rich, you can't handle money, you're a loser, you don't win, you don't win, and that might have been drilled into your head since you were a kid, and you might need therapy to get rid of some of that shit, and knowing someone's 5-second entry criteria isn't going to fix that, and it's not going to make you rich. So yeah, the journey begins on the inside. The trading strategy is just a hurdle, and that is also why trading is the ultimate journey through your life to get to know yourself. You don't have a boss, you don't have anyone keeping you accountable unless you create that person and you create that community, and you seek it for yourself. You're in charge. So yeah, it's a big hurdle, but it's one that we should all get over at some point in our lives. So DMT for me showed me who I was on a level that I couldn't even describe in this video. I couldn't begin to describe. It showed me love, it showed me relationships, it showed me what I was really thinking, what were my weaknesses, what was I most afraid of, and yeah, that's my rant over. I don't know if there was anything useful in there. It's been a weird video, a weird tone to it, but I thought I had to give you something for this weekend. Can't miss a video. Consistency. But yeah, hope you are having a good weekend, and I'll see you next week in the academy.